This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
This table is really tilted.
Excuse me? Am I gonna get a chance to speak?
Maybe I should take that back.
Denied. Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Take a giant step for mankind.
Welcome to the Tilted Table with your hosts, Sean and Joe.
Actually started this switch. It just happened naturally over time. All right, well, folks, welcome to the Tilted Table, the internet's answer to a question that no one asked. I am your co-pilot, Sean Landon Clark.
And I'm the other gentleman on the plane, Joey Joe, a.k.a. the Fracky Mac.
Yeah. The Fracky Mac. I was trying to figure out the other day how to spell that.
It's all one word run together.
So this is episode 8, I believe, if my counting is correct. I don't know, but I think I'm right. I think this is episode 8. If it's not, it's not. I apologize. So today we decided that we're going to bounce back to a prior episode, or at least an idea based on a prior episode when we talked about iconic movies that we have never seen. We're going to talk about television shows. And with this, there's a couple ways that we're considering approaching it. One being iconic TV shows that we haven't seen, or even iconic television shows that we have seen, but we don't think they're that good. But it's open-ended. I mean, we could talk about TV shows in any way that we want. I do have a list.
Okay.
At least a partial list. So yeah, if you want to use that as a reference, we can. I kind of have an idea of what I would talk about. But I want to start with you. You can go with a show that you've seen, you didn't like, a classic series that you've never seen, or, even a series that you did see and you think is the greatest thing that they ever did.
So the one that I would really enjoy watching, never sat down. I think I actually bought the DVD box set back when that was a thing, is I've never seen The Sopranos.
What?
Yep.
See, look, we're gonna repeat a podcast because last time it was like you don't like mafia stuff. So
right. And I love that kind of material. And I know that it's supposed to be extremely well written.
Yeah.
It's got amazing plot. The actors are amazing. I know all of these things. It's just whenever Cookie and I are sitting down thinking like, okay, what series are we going to start next? I always default to like, what's new on Netflix or Paramount or whatever it is. And Sopranos never pops into my brain. The other one.
Well, wait, before you go to the other one, have you ever seen at least one episode of The Sopranos?
0.
Have you ever seen clips at least?
I maybe like on an award show like him,
okay.
When it won an Emmy or something.
All right.
So I've literally seen no pieces, no highlights, none of that stuff.
All right.
The one though, the cultural watershed show that I have actively, I gave it 3 episodes, tried to like, and I wanted to appreciate it for what it was, and then I was like, nope, Seinfeld.
God.
And I bought all of the seasons of Seinfeld in preparation for this amazing marathon that we were going to do.
Wow. I mean, I can understand Sopranos. Again, going back to the idea that, like, again, if you're not totally into the mafia and that kind of stuff, again, it's a very specific kind of thing. Where Seinfeld, to me, is like one of the greatest shows ever made. I love Seinfeld. I could watch that stuff all day long. So it's surprising to me that you watched the first couple of episodes and didn't like it. Although I've watched a lot of analysis of Seinfeld, from YouTube videos, and a lot of people, even like Jason Alexander, who plays George Costanza, had largely talked about how they didn't really have a specific direction, at least for the first half of that first season. They were really unclear with Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David, the primary writers. And so I think even they say that that first half of that first season is a little bit wonky in their minds. Although I like those episodes. I think the core of what the show was about was there. It was obviously got more refined as they went along. So it's surprising because, that show is probably up there with some of the most critically acclaimed and loved TV shows, especially sitcoms, right? They're probably like MASH or something like that. These great sitcoms. So surprised that you didn't get into it.
Yeah, it's a culturally I mean, relevant. And if you say what are the top, say 20 sitcoms.
Oh,
that
yeah.
made an impression. I know 100% Seinfeld is going to be mentioned in that list.
Yeah, well, I see it often mentioned as the greatest sitcom ever made. So there's at least enough people out there arguing that it simply is the best sitcom ever made. I think if people who are, I don't know if you call them a sitcom aficionado or people that,
I guess you could do that.
yeah, look at these things critically. Again, I know some people look at sitcoms as being kind of basic or whatever, but yeah, when they talk about the greatest sitcoms ever made, I often hear it as number one, and I think by most metrics, so people say at least it's going to always be in people's top 5. And so, yeah, I love Seinfeld. But mainly for me, I like Jerry Seinfeld. I like and he plays a fictionalized version of himself on the show. I like his character. I really like George Costanza. To me, he makes the show. And Elaine, she's great too. I never cared for Kramer, and I know Kramer is one of the more popular characters.
Right.
I think he was a little over the top for me, but it's an ensemble cast. The writing is really, really well done, and I think that Larry David really hit on something when he put that show together. And they always call it a show about nothing, but it really is, I think, a show about people having to deal with the sort of minutia of daily life and the daily struggles of just existing as a human in a world that's kind of indifferent to everything. So I think it was groundbreaking in that way. And I would say it didn't have a plot, but it kind of did, I think, in that way. And I don't know if you've ever seen Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Nope.
So it's basically Seinfeld again, except now it's Larry David playing a fictionalized version of himself. And the show's writing style is almost identical. And what I love about Curb Your Enthusiasm is because it's supposed to be Larry David playing a fictionalized version of himself. So he is the creator of Seinfeld, or at least one of the creators. So there's they bring in, Jerry Seinfeld and Jason Alexander and Julia Louis-Dreyfus as themselves, right? And they do a really good job with it because a lot of people were really, really upset with the way that Seinfeld ended. So the last episode of Seinfeld, the series finale, I mean, people around the world gathered around their TV for this monumental event, and a lot of people didn't like the way the show ended. I thought the ending was fine. I don't know why people give it.
How did it end?
Okay, so we're going to end up talking about Seinfeld for an hour. So essentially, I'll tell you how it ends. So basically, the series ends like this. I can't remember where they're going. The crew's going somewhere. I think it's like an award show. Maybe it's Jerry finally getting like an Emmy. Because on the show Seinfeld itself, see, the show's, I think what made it really popular is very meta. So one of the storylines inside Seinfeld was NBC comes to Jerry, because he plays a comedian, right? He plays, again, a fictionalized version of himself, and they offer him a TV show. And it was, in the 90s, all these comedians were getting, these sitcoms. So they decided to put that storyline into the show. And so the NBC executives are like, okay, we'll give you a show, come up with an idea. So him and George are trying to come up with an idea for a sitcom. And George eventually says, I got an idea, a show about nothing. And essentially pitches what their show is.
Gotcha.
Right? And so I think and they did. They actually at one point started, shooting that show inside the show. So they had to cast a Kramer, an Elaine, a George. So they got all these actors that kind of look like them, and they're supposed to act like them. And then the characters get mad at the actors because like, that's not how I act, right? Like, see where we're going with this?
Yeah.
So at some point at the end of the show, I think they're going to like an award show, maybe like an Emmys or something like that. They're on a plane. There's a problem with the plane, and they get off in this small town. I think it's like in Massachusetts or something. And they're all standing outside of this like restaurant, and a dude gets mugged in front of them. And the cast of Seinfeld is just standing there, going like, "Oh, look at that! I wonder if he's going to get killed." Like they're just joking it as this guy's getting carjacked. And so in that town, apparently, it's against the law to not help people when there's like a crime going on. So they all get arrested. And they're put on trial for being basically indifferent, unsympathetic, assholes. And so what they do is they bring back all these characters from the entire series that they've done wrong to. And that's a big part of the show is that's like, I don't think that Jerry and Elaine and George and Kramer intentionally want to hurt people, but they're kind of assholes, all of them. And this is, each character reminding you of a previous show. Remember when you did this or did that, and then the jury hears this and they sentence them to, I think, a year in jail. So they all go to jail. And you said you saw the first couple of episodes, right?
I want to say we saw the first 3 or 4, and then I remember Cookie was like, I don't know what I feel about this show, and I was like, well, it is about a show about nothing,
Right.
and I think there's other things we should be watching. And then we just never went. And again, I'm not opposed to binging through it, but we just never went back to it.
So in the very first episode, and I don't know if you would remember this, George and Jerry are sitting in the cafe, and they're having a conversation about something, and in the middle of it, Jerry points out, so really the first Seinfeld-y kind of bit or joke that's in Seinfeld, where he's like, what's up with the button on your shirt? And George is like, what are you talking about? He goes, the button, it's not high enough, but it's not low enough. It's like this button, it's like in no man's land. And George is like, what are you talking about? Like, and that's the whole Seinfeld back and forth, where they have these sort of inane conversations about nothing, right? Mm-hmm. So at the series finale, when they go to jail, they're all sitting in the cell, and they're sort of just contemplating what just happened, and like, well, what now? And then Jerry looks over at George and says, hey, what's up with your button? And he's like, what are you talking about? He goes, like, and they do the same bit, and then George just stops and goes, wait, haven't we had this conversation before? And that's how the series ends. They go back to the first joke. Again, people hated it. I thought it was pretty good. So when Curb Your Enthusiasm came out, now we got this fictional version of Larry David, and now we have the actual actors playing themselves. And there were talks about a reunion. And like they would actually talk to Larry David, would you ever do a Seinfeld reunion? And again, I think Larry David's a genius. Rather than actually just do a Seinfeld reunion on Curb Your Enthusiasm, they do a storyline where they're going to do a Seinfeld reunion, and they actually do the reunion in the Curb Your Enthusiasm universe. So you see them on the soundstage. So instead of seeing like what you would see with a sitcom, you get to see all the outside, all the cameras,
right? And
as they actually are trying to figure it out. So they did a Seinfeld reunion in Curb Your Enthusiasm. I thought was genius. That's a great way to do it, right? And of course, it's not just about the Seinfeld reunion. It's about Larry David and Jerry and everybody having to put this thing together. So I did not see the series finale of Curb Your Enthusiasm. I watched most of Curb, but then I stopped a couple years ago. So it just aired like maybe a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, something like that.
Okay.
And somehow Jerry gets arrested. That's all I really know. I don't know the storyline at all. And something happens, and I don't know what happens. But whatever it was, Larry David had openly said, he goes, this was our way to correct, because everybody hated the finale of Seinfeld, to correct the finale through Curb Your Enthusiasm. So obviously Jerry goes to jail. So they're obviously doing the same kind of theme. Like I said, I don't know what happens. I know people who are listening probably know. They're screaming at me right now. But Larry David goes to jail to get him out or whatever. But when they're walking away, whatever Jerry went through, he says to Larry David, he goes, it's crazy just what I went through, right? And then basically says, oh, you know what? We should have ended Seinfeld this way. And he's like, yeah, this would have been a way better ending. or something to that effect. And people seem to like the ending of Curb. So
that's pretty clever.
Yeah, Larry David to me is genius. And I think my love for Seinfeld probably comes from the fact that I really do believe that he's a comedic genius, and his writing is, I don't know, when you look at the world of comedy writing and sitcoms, I don't think you could really top Larry David. I don't think anybody did it any better ever.
What was the show? I think we were talking about it or one of the other afternoons. A bunch of this SNL characters. Was it like Paul Rudd was a writer? Was it Jonah Hill was a
sitcom?
Yes.
I don't know. I'm trying to think what sitcom that Jonah Hill did or what Paul Rudd had written on. But in the meantime, while you're looking that up, I was trying to think about a show that was super popular that I've never really seen. I'm going to shoot this out there because I have seen a handful of episodes, but not any kind of continuity, is The Office, which is, I think, largely considered a very iconic TV show.
We're talking about The American Office.
Yes. And I'm not going to sit here and say I've never seen it. I've seen probably a dozen episodes. Mm-hmm. But as much as that show is loved and quoted and the characters are really beloved, outside of Steve Carell's character, Mike Scott, and Dwight, I couldn't name you one other character on that show.
Is it Jim?
That's the straight guy.
Yeah.
I know who that is. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cookie and I binged through it, and then we got to the end and it was like, oh, that was good, and then we just moved on. So I know that it's a beloved show, but nothing stands out in my mind.
So you weren't moved by it?
No.
Yeah, but my friend Sergio, he actually got in trouble as a teacher because of that show. I guess he really loves it. And I'm not knocking that. That show is iconic. So there's millions and millions of people that watch this show and know all the bits and all the characters. And if you make a reference from The Office, they would know it. We had to do these videos where we had to introduce ourselves to parents. This is during COVID. So normally we'd have the back to school night type thing where, parents would meet the teachers. But since we couldn't do that, we had to go onto this website and basically videotape a video saying, oh, hi, my name is Sean and I'm blah, 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 whatever, right?
Okay.
He decided to do a bit from The Office, I guess related to school in some way. So he did this bit and he was in character and he did the whole thing. Apparently nobody in administration had ever watched The Office. So when he submitted it, and again, these things get submitted and, obviously admin, it's not like submitted to admin first for approval. It goes on his website so anybody can look at it. And apparently they didn't ever see The Office. They knew nothing what he was doing. And they went after him because they think there's something wrong with this guy. They thought it was inappropriate. And what the fuck are you doing?
Really?
Oh, yeah. And so
Wow.
he got some heat for that. And he got in trouble for that. And then he tried to explain it. And again, I'm not going to say anything about public school administrations. Anybody that works in education is going to know exactly what I'm talking about. Administrations are, when they act like, I think school people in general act very malleable and nice, and they're understanding. But when it comes to stuff like this, they can be very short, especially if they think it's something that could get them in trouble or
Right.
give them a bad name or it's a bad look for teachers.
Do you recall, and then we can go back to the programming, exactly what he did?
You know what? I never watched it, so I don't know what bit it was. I think I watched maybe like 10 seconds of it, but again, I didn't watch The Office, so it would have been lost on me too. I'd have been like, okay, it's I knew because he had when he did it and he started getting heat for it. We had talked and he's like, it's a bit from The Office. And he's explaining the bit to me, and I'm like, dude, I don't watch The Office like that. And he's just like, what? And I'm like, yeah, so I don't really get the reference. And I had no clue what he was doing. And again, this is a teacher. He's not an actor.
Right.
I'm thinking it looked bad. It looked strange and weird. Again, acting's a talent. So if you're going to, decide I'm going to recreate a bit from a TV show, you should have your chops down. Otherwise, it probably does come off as not only cringy or weird, because you can't act, but if people don't know what the reference is, it's probably even 10 times worse.
Yeah, goofball.
Can you imagine if you'd never seen Breaking Bad and I did, the I'm not in danger, I am the danger speech, and I can't act. You would look at me like I'm a psychopath.
Man, that is wild.
Okay, I'm going to shoot another one out to you. And I'm curious about this. What do you think of Friends?
Great question. So I think I've seen like 2 episodes of Friends.
Okay.
During college, like Cookie and all of her roommates and whatnot would always gather around, and that was kind of a social thing that she and her buddies did. But I know who the characters are, but I couldn't tell you anything about them.
Wow. I treat Friends like you treat The Office.
Okay.
I've seen most every episode of Friends. I don't dislike it, but boy, people love that show. And I don't think it's that great. Not at least that, to me, like an iconic show. It didn't appeal to me in that way, considering it was, when that show was in its prime, I think it ran from the 90s into the early 2000s or whatever.
Something like that.
Right? I was that age, so I should have been able to identify. I'm basically the same age as, the actors, right? But I just didn't really gel with me. I love Jennifer Aniston. We had this conversation when we talked about Office Space. I love Jennifer Aniston. Her character in that show, I thought was fine. But the only character I really liked was Matthew Perry's character. I thought Chandler was funny. I think he made the entire show, him and Ross. But I could not stand the character of Phoebe or Joey at all in any way. So the show never resonated with me. But I know some people I've told, I'm like, especially people my age, were that age during that time, to them, it's like the greatest show ever made. So, yeah. Okay, so let's dip back because apparently you're batting 1,000 right now.
Yeah,
You haven't seen anything.
And it's amazing because I think I am fairly well versed in lots of different series, and whether it goes back into TGIF shows at the end of the week to now any of the shows that are on any of the streaming services, I've watched almost all of them. But some of these iconic ones, like Sopranos, it is on my to-do list.
Yeah.
I am going to do it.
I got a lot of those.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
Leave a like on the video. I know you're enjoying this. Can you shut up?
The internet's answer to a question that was never asked. The Tilted Table with Sean and Joe.
So what is an iconic show or series that you have seen?
One of my favorite, well, you already hit on Breaking Bad. I think that's the only series I've ever watched in full twice.
Okay, yeah. Breaking Bad is, if it's not at the top of my list of greatest shows of all time, it's second, and that's only because I'm fighting between that and Better Call Saul. So that universe, to me, is top of the heap. It can't be touched. A lot of people think Sopranos is the greatest, and I've heard that argument a bunch of times, and I've seen The Sopranos. I don't think The Sopranos is close to Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. I wouldn't say that to some people that I know because I think they would get very upset over that and want to get into a fight over it. Sopranos is really, really good. I don't think you have Breaking Bad without Sopranos, but I think that it can't even touch Breaking Bad, not even close. And I like Sopranos.
Yeah, I mean, the other one that gives Breaking Bad a run for its money is Sons of Anarchy. I really, really liked that show.
I have never seen Sons of Anarchy. And
is that like a religious thing?
No, it was on and it was popular, and I just didn't watch it. And I actually legally, air quotes, downloaded the first season with the intent of I'm going to watch this entire series, and I just never did. So I only downloaded the first season. I never watched one episode, and that file was on an old computer, long gone now. I don't have it. Yeah, I've never seen it.
That definitely highly recommend. Highly recommend. In fact, on the series finale, I think that's the only program I've ever watched, and I cried at the end.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, man alive. And Cookie's like, I can't believe it ended that way. And I remember looking across the couch, and I said, it had to end that way. As sad as it is, it had to end that way. In fact, I liked it so much that for Christmas one year, she bought me a black bathrobe that was patched up like a Sons of Anarchy biker jacket.
Clean. There was a video that went viral of a guy who I think the backstory is his girlfriend or his wife had bought him the vest. They call them cuts, right?
Right.
The bikers wear, right?
Yep.
So it's a Sons of Anarchy, right? And he put it on and was driving on a motorcycle. So the video starts him at a gas station, and he's like filling up his motorcycle, and a bunch of I don't know if they were Hell's Angels, but some legit biker crew rolls in, and they go up to him and they're like, "Hey man, you know, this is not cool. It's disrespectful." And of course it's just some dude, right? Probably watched the show or whatever. He's not a biker. And he didn't, it's not like he was wearing, I think most people are aware that you should not put on a Hell's Angels vest.
Not
or
if you want to get shot.
Yeah, you can get hurt. But this isn't a real, it's a TV show, right? So I think he's looking at he would buy a t-shirt, for a TV show and wear this, so he's wearing that. And so he tries to explain, he's like, oh, it's just a TV show. He's doing that thing. And there's bikers, and I mean, they're not trying to hurt him. But they're just intimidating ass motherfuckers, right? Are basically trying to explain to them that, these vests, they're earned, and there's this sort of history, and just to have, I guess, even a fake one or made up one from a TV show wearing it is disrespectful. You earn these things. And yeah, he, as I recall from the video, he took it off, I was like, God damn. I was like, I would do if bikers rolled up on me like that. But then again, I wouldn't wear a vest like that. Not because I'm aware of the culture enough that I wouldn't want to get caught. I think they're ugly. What the fuck would I wear that thing for? I look like an asshole wearing the Sons of Anarchy. You dope.
That's fantastic. Well, so I will watch Sopranos. You've got to watch Sons of Anarchy.
Okay, I'm down with that.
And it's total binge worthy, man. It's like one of those. I've definitely lost hours of sleep because right when we get to the end of an episode, and then usually I go to bed at 9:30, and then all of a sudden the credits would roll, and I immediately look at the time and I can stay up later. I can do one less hour of sleep, but then it would happen to me until 1 a.m. because I couldn't. the way that each episode would end.
Sure, yeah.
It was too much of a cliffhanger. I had to see what would happen.
I mean, when I saw Breaking Bad, again, I didn't have cable, not during that time, and I don't have cable now. I rarely watch television. I don't even have any streaming services. So when Breaking Bad was on, all my friends were just like, "Oh, this show is so great, it's so great," and I knew the concept of the show. But I didn't have access to it, so I would never watch it unless I went to my friend's house or whatever. I'm not going to see it. But as the show got closer to the end, I decided, like, because I was teaching, so summer vacation's coming up, and I'm like, you know what? I think I need to watch this show. And so again, I legally, air quote, downloaded every episode because it ended probably maybe like 3 weeks prior to that. And so I had every episode, and I watched the first episode like on a Monday morning, right? I'm on vacation. I got really nothing going on. I watched that entire series, I think, by the middle of the following week.
Wow.
I was watching probably 5 or 6 episodes a day, but that was the problem I was having, was it would end, and I'm just like, oh, I got to see the next episode. So, but when you watch 2 or 3 episodes, right, and you're like, look, I can't sit here all day and just watch this shit. And I'm like, okay, just one more.
Just one more.
Right?
Famous last words. Just one more.
And then it would end, and I'm like going like, fuck. I got to see what happens. I got to go to the next episode, right? So, and I love Breaking Bad, obviously. When I got to watch it straight through like that, so there wasn't any issues with remembering what happened in a previous week or even a previous season. When Better Call Saul came out, I really wrestled with myself, going like, should I wait until this whole show is just done, and so I can sit down and watch the entire thing? And at the time, I was living with some roommates. I rented a room in this house. I was in a transition period, and they had cable, so they had AMC, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm watching this thing. And yeah, so I did it that way. I prefer to binge watch these things, but I've binge watched Better Call Saul, straight through beginning to end. So, and I've seen both Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul probably each one of those series 5-6 times.
Wow.
Yeah. I'll go back to it and watch it again. But of course, doing some writing that I'm trying to be inspired by the way that Vince Gilligan created that universe and that series. So a lot of it now is watching to see exactly, like, really the details. Like when you go from scene to scene to scene, how does he lay this stuff out? So I was going to ask you about another show, The Wire. I've never seen the show, but people praise the hell out of it.
Yes.
And I really don't even know what it's about. Like Sons of Anarchy, at least I know what that's about.
Right. I watched, it's about within the last 6 months or so. I heard so many great things about it. And it's kind of like you saying, hey, I can't believe you haven't watched The Sopranos. They're like, you haven't seen The Wire? Come on, man.
They put it up there.
So it was one of those days where we needed to start a new series, and I'm like, everybody keeps talking about The Wire, let's do it. And I don't know if it was maybe the time. It was like 8:40 at night. We watched like 20 minutes. Cookie had to take a phone call for something, and then I turned on something else, and I don't know, we just never went back to it. So yeah, that's my full extent of The Wire.
20 minutes of the first episode.
Yep, and that was it.
What about? I'm going to go with I guess a television universe would be Star Trek.
All of it. I've actually been to a Star Trek convention.
God, I swear.
And it's funny is one of my favorite characters ever is the character Q, played by John Delancey, who is the dad in Breaking Bad.
Yes. So my Star Trek experience, and I'll be real quick, and I'd like you to talk more about this because I have an issue with Star Trek. My mother loves Star Trek. So I grew up watching the original series, obviously in reruns. I'm not that old. Right. And I remember as a kid kind of digging it, but I wasn't really into it. So when The Next Generation came out, and I think I was either just maybe in high school or maybe coming out of high school, I fell in love with The Next Generation. So Q is an amazing character. And the same actor plays Jane's father in Breaking Bad. He's a great actor.
John Delancey.
Yeah, John Delancey. But as they spun off into things like Voyager and Deep Space, is it Voyager?
Voyager.
Deep Space Nine. And the prequel with Scott Bakula, Enterprise, right? I attempted to watch those. I couldn't stomach. I couldn't get through even one episode. It just didn't gel with me. I don't know why. So I'm kind of curious, as somebody who's really only familiar with The Next Generation and some of the original series, Like, what is it about this show? Like, there's conventions for obvious, like Star Wars. It's got that level of following.
It's funny if you compare it to Star Wars. They both have their own respective universes. I think Star Trek is a lot more kind of positive in terms of like the way that the different races maybe get analyzed. And I don't mean it's like a woke TV show or anything like that. I just think it's a lot more positive about like what the future might look like.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely with the Next Generation. I noticed how much it was about character interactions, less about let's blow up the Death Star or whatever.
Yeah, and there's always a lesson to be learned in the different episodes, and I think that's a really nifty thing. But it's funny, the time that I did go to a Star Trek convention, my brother and I were like die-hard watchers. At that time, it was Next Generation. Deep Space Nine had just come out, and I remember the two of us walked into this Holiday Inn convention center, and I'm looking around. I'm like, man, there's some weird people in here.
They have that reputation.
Yeah. So whenever you hear the term Trekkies, I don't know that I would go so far as to call myself a Trekkie, but I do think Star Trek is better than Star Wars.
Oh, okay.
And I know that if to a lot of people those are fighting words, but I stand by it.
I'm on the fence. They're equal to me, but I'm not a big Star Trek or Star Wars fan or whatever. I'm not really super into them. I like them, but I never got into it at that level. But it's interesting you talked about more positive kind of vibe, obviously more character kind of driven. And I'm thinking about it now that the episodes of the Next Generation that I didn't like were ones where I think they dived into more characters, personal situations. I really liked, I shouldn't say this, I only really liked the episodes where they got into some kind of thing that they had to figure out what was going on and then figure out a way out of the problem.
Yep.
Yeah, so those episodes I was more drawn to than, I think there was one episode, I don't know why this sticks out in my mind, it's when Worf, his kid gets, on the ship for whatever reason, and he doesn't know his own child all that well. I guess separated for whatever reason, and he has to sort of bond with his child. And being Worf and being a Klingon and that sort of touchy-feely thing Klingons are, so he has to figure out how to do that. I remember that episode. I'm thinking to myself, boring. I don't want to. Come on. Well, I want you to get into some kind of weird time warp where if you don't figure out a way to get out of the problem, and
the universe dies.
Right.
Everything implodes. Well, here's a quick side note question. Then we can go back to the television show since we mentioned the words or phrase Star Wars. If you were a Jedi or you could use the Force, would you be a Jedi or a Sith? Like, where on the spectrum would you be?
I guess I would. I'm assuming I'd be a Jedi. I mean, I'm going to go old school. I'd be Luke Skywalker, right? Or Obi-Wan.
So what? And what color would your lightsaber be?
Is there a limit with colors? I can make it any color I want.
I think you make it any color you want.
I'm gonna go, and it just shows you just how in touch I am with my own feminine side. It'd be hot pink.
There we go.
Yeah, everybody would underestimate me, because he's got a hot pink saber. Yeah, they would definitely think I'm weak. And I'd come at them with that, and I'd annihilate them.
I could see you as on the Jedi side of the spectrum.
Yeah, I think that's where I would land for sure. I appreciate Star Wars, but like I said, I've only seen the first 6. I've never seen Rogue One. I've never seen
Mandalorian.
I've never watched The Mandalorian. No, even though Bill Burr's in it. That shouldn't be a reason to necessarily watch The Mandalorian, but I do love Bill Burr. I've never seen Rogue One, Han Solo, which I heard wasn't particularly good. And what was it? What's it's not Return of the Jedi, but what's the other one with the Jedi in the name? Wasn't that the last one?
Are we talking about the movies?
Yeah, the movies.
Oh.
It was Rogue One, and then there's Han Solo or Solo. What were the other ones?
I know which movie you're talking about. Yeah,
I know that Disney they did a couple, and I know they get kind of mixed reviews. So, and even people I know that are big Star Wars fans, they don't really have glowing things to say about a lot of those movies, especially after George Lucas transferred all the rights over to Disney, sold them out.
My only beef with Star Wars is like how they'll be like, the Empire is so all powerful, they know everything, destroy everything. And then it'll be like, wait a second, that character just literally walked right past the most evil bad dude in the entire galaxy, and that was it. I don't know. That's if they are so bad, then I think that needs to be played out in some of the episodes.
Sure. Yeah. I think the only problem I really had with the original Star Wars was the idea that Luke is Darth Vader's kid and Luke is Princess Leia's brother. It's like, give me a break, man. Like, you guys, people just randomly meet in the universe and you all happen to be related. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was kind of, well,
immediate blood related.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's not even like your cousin or a distant relative of some sort. I get, well, maybe if they had 23 and me back in the 70s, they would have gone with that storyline. I just got my DNA test back. I'm 1/16 Darth Vader. Or whatever it would be, right? Some bullshit.
Oh,
like
man, that's the best thing I've heard all day today. I think I'm going to use that in conversation. Joe, where's your family from? 1/16 Darth Vader, man. Oh, my God. Priceless.
So, we might want to dip back into this TV.
Ooh, and going back to the TV question, so I think there's two types of people. It's kind of like like if you eat crab, there's the people that they'll crack the crab and they will eat the crab as they're cracking it, or there's the pilers that will like crack the crab, create the giant pile of crab, and then they'll eat it.
Okay,
it's kind of like,
is that the binge watching?
Are you the binge watcher, or are you the as every single episode comes out you watch it?
I think it largely just depends on whether or not you're aware of the show when it's on the air.
Yeah,
like,
okay.
I don't remember The Wire ever being on the air. I didn't hear about it until it was long off the air.
Yeah, me neither. But for myself, I'll use Game of Thrones. Cookie and I are total bingers. So
Okay.
I purposely would not read anything. If somebody would bring up what's going on in conversation, I'd change the subject because I wanted to binge an entire season in a weekend.
Sure. I've never seen Game of Thrones, and my intent was it had gotten so big, and this is after I binged Breaking Bad. I said, I'm not touching the show until it's done. I'm just not going to do it. And it ended, and I had every intention of binge watching the entire series, much like Sons of Anarchy. Just never did it.
Well, since right now it's summer break in between writing your book.
Right.
Yeah, you've got some time on your hands. Those are two epic shows.
But I gotta have access to this stuff. I stopped downloading things, air quotes, legally. Mm-hmm. I got a notice from the cable company last time I did it. So they're either paying attention or I downloaded the wrong file. I don't know how that stuff works. And I know that's so fucking old school. Like, what the hell are you going on LimeWire or some shit? Right.
Morpheus.
Morpheus. Which is, for me, I don't have streaming services, and I guess maybe I'm just cheap. I don't really necessarily want to pay like on Amazon Prime for, what is it, like $1.99 for an episode or 99 cents for an episode, which is, again, I'm being stubborn with that. But at some point I'm going to have to do that because I won't download stuff, quote unquote, legally anymore. Right? I'm not doing that. So, yeah, if I want to watch these shows, I'm going to have to do that or go super old school and buy like a bunch of used DVDs maybe on eBay. I'm sure this stuff's got to be on DVD and then, watch it that way. So I can always watch it, sell it, again and, whatever. But again, that's how cheap I am.
Do you own a DVD player?
No, I don't. Well, I do technically on my computer. My desktop has a CD player in it, but I know how to rip DVDs into computer files.
Okay.
So yeah, and I can watch it that way if I want to do it that way.
That seems like a lot of work versus signing up for Netflix.
Right? See, you see how impractical I think. There's weird. Like I always say, people have blocks. Like you could just like be on the ball with everything, but everybody has like areas of their life where they do things in the most impractical way that make very little sense. And I will say that my watching of movies and television are like that. Like, I had a free Netflix account through my ex, and so I was great, right? But of course they did that thing where now they block it.
Password sharing.
Right? And so I'm just like, son of a bitch. And then it's just like, I called her up and I said, yeah, what's the deal with this? Can I get some kind of in? And she's just like, it's $10 a month. You make a lot of money. Fucking sign up for a goddamn subscription, you cheap bastard. I'm like, no.
It's a matter of principle.
Right? I don't even know if it's a matter of
refuse.
principle. I think part of it is because I actually think that like I'm very anti like Peacock Network when they had like one of the playoff games on Peacock, and I'm like I'm not giving in to these people who now want to turn everything into a pay-per-view event. And I get that it's a streaming service. It's like having technically kind of like cable, but even when I had cable television, I was angry a lot of the times at it because I had like 500 channels. And about 5 of the channels were worth anything. I had so many infomercial channels that were 24-hour infomercials. I mean, I'm paying for actual advertisements. And so I got rid of that. And I think that's part of where my anger is with those types of things. It's just like, you offer 1 or 2 things and then you just fill the rest of it with a bunch of shit and then charge people, money. And so I think that's where my block is. Although, again, it's impractical. They're actually, I think Hulu's a pretty good service. I had that for a while through friend's account, password sharing. Netflix, I thought was a lot of garbage, stuff that wasn't particularly all that good. So, when I see things like HBO Max, what's on there? And like, oh, this and this and this are on there. And like, and what else?
Right.
And it's like, shot in the wind. There's tons of stuff, but nothing nobody really wants to watch. And so like a lot of my friends that have no qualms about signing up for every streaming service, they'll talk about how they got Disney Plus, HBO Plus, or,
Max,
Peacock, and they got them all. And they complain about how much they spend. And then they're complaining about how much like it sucks. There's like 15, 20, 30 things I want access to. And unfortunately, they're all, only pieces of these are on each one. So I got to get all this stuff. And but like 90% of it, they don't like. So I think that's kind of my block. And it's impractical. It's stupid. I should have at least one streaming service where I have access to some stuff. Right. Rather than, think I'm going to go to Pirate Bay or Morpheus and go download some shit.
I think you got to list this on your resume under skills and accomplishments. In the year 2024, you don't have a single streaming service.
I don't.
In the United States.
The only thing I have, and this is how lazy I am, I don't even have things like Tubi. There's one I think called Zeem. It's a new one. You can get all your local channels through I think it's through, I'm assuming, well, from what I understand, it's free. It may not be free. What do I know? But that's what I understand. So it's like you get all your local channels through a stream for free. I still haven't signed up for any of the free ones. And that takes, 5 minutes? I'm too lazy to even do that. So, but I don't watch a lot of television. I think that's part of the problem is the drive, to do it. I've been reading. I've always been a pretty big reader, but I've been reading a lot more. And with everything else I do, it feels like I just don't have time to sit down and watch a bunch of television. But I think that's also kind of an excuse. You can make time for anything. And I'm probably one of the few Americans that actually has to sit here and say, like, you know what, when I find the time, I'm going to make the time. I'm going to get that done. Oh, what are you going to get done? You're going to do like this. You're going to do like this cool thing. No, I'm just going to sit around and watch television. Like, fuck, that's like the easiest thing to do for every goddamn American. That's why Americans don't get shit done, because they're always on their ass watching fucking TV.
Yep.
I'll have to get on that. The last thing I wanted to throw at you is, being close in age, I'm curious as to old shows, if you have seen them or haven't seen them. And I'm going to start, and we don't have to spend a whole bunch of time on these. Did you watch MASH?
Sort of is the answer. Grandma and Grandpa were huge fans of MASH. So if I was over at their house, 100% would be watching it. And another old classic that I literally watched an hour a day, Monday through Friday, was I Love Lucy.
Yeah, classic.
It came on at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I was homeschooled back in the 80s, 90s, and then we lived in the middle of nowhere. So I'd start my schoolwork early, and then it was kind of like recess was to watch back-to-back I Love Lucy, and then go back and dive into my math textbook or something.
Yeah, I watched probably every episode of I Love Lucy as a kid, for sure. I don't recall like loving it. I thought it was entertaining, but considered a classic. Mertz. Yeah. MASH. My mother loved MASH. I probably watched every episode. I think as I got older, I appreciated it a lot more. But as a kid, I thought it was relatively entertaining. But my mom loved that show. The first show I really got into where I was just like, every week I've got to watch the show is Cheers, and it still today is at least in probably my top 3 shows of all time. Okay. Maybe top 5. It's hard to tell these days. Shows are, there's so many shows out there. Did you ever watch Cheers?
No, I mean, if it was, my parents might be watching it, but they weren't regular viewers or anything.
Okay.
So if it was on TV, and I'd sit on the floor and watch it, but not on a regular basis.
Yeah, that was a show that, like, definitely every week. I mean, that show started in '82, so it was in the second grade.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's also back when, now it's like you just, DVR it or whatever, or you jump on a streaming service. But, when these old shows, like, you need to be in front of your television at that time on that date. And if you're late, so sad, you missed it. So a lot of those old programs, I never saw. Yeah,
and I think the other show which hasn't been mentioned, which should be mentioned, I mean, there's a lot of classic TV shows, but The Simpsons was a show that was in every Sunday night. We had to watch The Simpsons. I went out of my way, and at that point, I was already a teenager, even into my early adulthood, and it was still like, people are going like, it's Sunday night, what's going on? Let's go do something. I'm like, 8 o'clock, I gotta go watch The Simpsons. And I think my friends were looking at me like, what are you, like 15? Like 12 years old or something? But of course, that was for the first, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Mm-hmm. That show has been on way too long. It's sad because I think that it, in my opinion, should be the greatest television show ever created, hands down. I mean, it shifted American culture, which is hard to do. Mm-hmm. They ruined it by beating a dead horse and just wringing that towel for every little ounce of water they could get out of it. And it's still on today, and it's 35th season.
Wowzers.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, that show should have been axed fucking 25 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some things need to ride off onto the sunset.
Yeah.
That was a good question, though, man. I really enjoyed the walk down memory lane with shows that we haven't seen, or the ones that made an indelible impression on our minds.
Yeah, that was 50 minutes right there.
I have an important announcement for you, so stay tuned.
Yo, that's some next level shit, bruh.
So you got me. Big deal.
The internet's answer to a question no one asked. The Tilted Table with Sean and Joe.
All right, folks. Thank you guys for joining us for another episode of The Tilted Table. My name is Sean Landon Clark.
And I am your co-pilot on this magic carpet ride, Joey Joe, a.k.a. the Fracky Mac.
And we are going to, I guess, get our hands on full series.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a lot of DVDs for me, since I won't order a damn streaming service, you cheap bastard.
Hey, I'm going to see if I can watch The Sopranos on VHS. I'll let you know how that goes.
Oh, on VHS, right?
VHS, man. Got to keep it real all the time.
All right, folks. See you later.
All right, peace.